In this video, we're talking all about Q links on the MPC. We're going to be using this beat that we just made with the brand new expansion, Tape Series Volume 1. To go through and demonstrate everything you can do with the Q-Link modes inside of the MPC. From basic mixing and sound design of a drum program with the Q-Link pad scene and pad parameter pages. And then at the end of the video, we're gonna jump over into the project Q-Link mode where we're going to assign multiple different synth parameters to Q-Links, using it for creative transitions in between different sequences. Make sure you stick around to the end, and now let's talk Q-Links. Now on the MPC 1 and the MPC Live 2, Q-Links are these 4 touch capacitive endless encoders to the right of the screen. You have 4 banks giving you access to 16 different parameters. Switching through the banks by clicking the Q-Link button. You can also go the opposite direction by holding Shift and stepping back. Now if you have the MPC X, you actually have access to all 16 of these knobs on the left-hand side with really nice graphic displays above each knob giving you feedback. But for this, we're going to focus on the MPC 1, which will be the same as the MPC Live 2. Now by default, when you touch these, you may notice that yours has a screen that pops out showing you what is the parameter on each one of these knobs right here. If you want to turn that off, you just press and hold down Q-Link and then show Q-Link status when touched. We turn that off and we no longer get that. However, this is really handy when you're actually on the main screen in the screen mode, because unlike other screens that have a highlighter box around them, if we go into Program Edit and see this highlighter box, it changes. On the main screen, we don't have that, so it's actually nice to touch these and see what sort of parameters we're controlling with these Q-Links. But for this video, we're going to go ahead and just turn that off. So focusing on the screen, which is what most people are familiar with, inside screen mode, besides the main page, majority of other pages are going to have this little box that shifts as we go through the different banks, showing you what each one of these knobs is controlling. Top knob being on the left when it's in a horizontal layout. And whatever screen we go to, that little box is going to follow. So the screen is really handy for just navigating around and using instant access to control the different parameters using the knobs. Moving over from that, we have pad parameter, pad scene, program, and project. Now, with pad scene and pad parameter, these only are effective when you're using a drum program. So if we go into pad parameter, you'll see that they're all off, and pad scene, they're all off. However, if we turn this to a drum program, which is on channel 1, and go back in, we can see now we have values generated on both the pad parameter and the pad scene. So focusing on pad parameter, I'm going to go ahead and hit Q-Link Edit. This will just keep this screen up. Now pad parameter gives access to the same parameter across all 16 different pads. By default, it is on level. This is a really easy way to mix drums inside of a drum kit. You can also click right here and change it to pan, pad mute, pad solo, so on and so forth, and control all 16 pads, that single parameter, by going through these different banks. We're going to leave it on its default, go back in the main, and just solo these drums just so we can use this to do a little quick mixing on this project. So playback. And now we can use this starting here to adjust this and so on and so forth, going into the second bank. So if I know that my kick is on this, I can use this knob and turn my kick down. If I want real-time feedback of what I'm actually doing, I can open this, go into the pad, and now I can see where each one of these is changing. So I'll typically use pad parameter just to do a really quick level balancing of my different sounds inside of this drum kit. But a lot of times I actually find myself more in pad scene. So if we go over into pad scene, and we're just going to pin that, we see that now we have 16 different parameters for each one of these sounds. We have the level, pan, the ability to solo this. Now these are turned off because this guy's soloed. The ability to mute it. Then we can go into the second bank, adjust the sends, go into the third bank, and this is actually really handy because on each one of these drum sounds, without adding a filter as an insert effect, you have a built-in filter right here. So let's say we wanted to reduce the high frequencies of this using the default filter. I'm simply going to turn this top knob, and right there we notice that nothing is happening because we may have to go in and activate the filter on this specific pad. So to do that, I'm going to hit Program Edit, and then I'm going to hit twice on Envelope, and now I'm in the filter section of this individual pad, and we can assign any one of these different filter types, but I'm just going to assign a low. Now I have the ability to cut off the high end of my sound. Now, which filter is activated on which pad really depends on the person that built this kit. You can go through and see that on here, some have it and some don't. If you want to really quickly turn it on all of them, just come in here. Now we've activated the filter on all of these different pads. So since we are in the pad scene, we have access to the filter resonance, the filter envelope depth tuning, also the attack, decay, sustain, release, the amp envelope for each one of these sounds. So let's say we wanted to shorten up this snare right here. We could go into the fourth bank, and by pressing and holding, I can see that I'm right up here. And I can go ahead and start tweaking the amp envelope for this specific sound. So if I wanted to lessen up the attack, make it shorter. And I find myself using the pad scene quite a bit for doing some sound design on the drums. But remember, pad parameter and pad scene are specific to drum programs because those are the only ones that essentially have a sample stored inside of each pad. If we go up one more level to the program, now taking a look at drums on the program level, these parameters are really dependent on what the designer of this kit wanted you to have access to. So from the standard press and hold Q-Link, we're not really sure where this filter cutoff is going, or where this filter cutoff is going, or where this level is going. But if we go into Edit and touch on it, now we're able to see that this is a filter cutoff for 13, this is a filter cutoff for 14. But if we wanted to reassign any one of these parameters for a specific purpose, we could do that very easily. So by going back to the main screen, I can see that I do have 3 effects on here. And let's say I wanted to create a low cut on the Q-Link that I can just turn on and off really quickly, affecting this entire program. So I do have an EQ already on here. If I come into the EQ, and let's say I want to cut it at 400 minus 12 and be able to turn that on and off with a Q-Link. So without it on, and then essentially a low cut on this drum program, I would be able to assign this to one of these knobs. So press and hold, and I'm going to come into Q-Link Edit, remember on the program level. And I'm not going to be using this pan at all for this program because all the pads individually are panned themselves. So I'm going to come here, which is bank number 4, and this is going to be, as you can see, the bottom knob on bank number 4. And I'm just going to hit reset. Now what we're going to do, instead of going through this entire massive menu to reassign it, we're actually just going to use the Learn feature right up here. So I need to make this into a program level change. I'm going to hit Learn. I'm going to come back into my main, go back into my effects. We can see that it's in Learn mode because it's currently flashing red right here. I'm going to pull up, and I'm just going to turn this on and off, and now this should be assigned to this Q-Link. And I can continue going forward and doing more custom assigning for this specific Q-Link section for this program itself. Now where this really comes in handy is if you say have a key group that was sampled from an external synth and it doesn't have any effects on it. You could add effects at the program level and then go through and assign the key parameters of those effects to different Q-Links to make it more of a playable instrument. Check out the video that's linked right here above, and that actually shows this process in detail. But let's say we go into a program that is not a drum program and that it is a plugin. Now, if we go back in, we're going to see that we have access to what the developer felt was the key parameters for this program itself. A lot of times you'll see that there is the attack, the filter cutoff, the start and end, the glide mode, and then you'll see the last two, bank 3 and 4, are typically reserved for effects. So if we wanted to turn up the reverb mix on this program to give it some dynamic, we could do that and have this. Now this is on the program level, but where it gets really interesting is when we come over to the project level. So by default on the project level, these are simply assigned to outputs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, the volume, the pan, the mute, and then this one is non-functioning. So what we're able to do is erase all these and assign them to anything within this project that will give us the ability to access key parameters from different tracks and different programs in order to create more of a lively playback experience, also really handy with live performance. So what we're going to do is just reset these really quick so they're not assigned to anything, and that gives us all the leeway to do whatever we want with them. Now on our first bank right here, I want to make these playable. So I want to assign this to, let's say, some part of the bass synth, this to some part of the lead synth, this to some part of the pad synth, and then this maybe the low cut, so I can use all these knobs at the same time, controlling the sound of 3 different programs all at the same time while cutting out the low frequencies. So first thing we're going to have to do is assign this, just like we did previously. We're going to assign this knob to the low cut on program 1. So we're going to select it, we're going to go into learn right here, come back into our main, go into our drum. Remember, it's flashing, so we know we're in learn mode. We're going to come into the parametric EQ, and we're just going to turn this guy on and off, and now it's assigned. Now this is on a project level, so when we go and assign these, we can assign them to other parameters on different programs or different tracks. So from this screen, we don't have to leave. We can just touch on the next knob and then find the next parameter that we want to assign to this knob, because it is still in learn mode. And as you can see, when we touch it, it's going to activate it. Now we can simply go on to the next one. We're still in learn, it's still flashing, and we're going to get out of here and go into, let's say, the bass. And what was really cool was maybe adding some reverb to that bass. So program edit. And I know that that reverb is going to be over here in the effects under delay and reverb. And I want to be able to control the mix of the reverb on the bass track with this knob. So I'm just going to wiggle it a little bit, and now I have access to that. Now I'm going to go back to my main. I'm going to switch over to my pad, back into program edit. Now with this pad, I want to adjust the filter cutoff, which is right here. So I'm going to touch this guy, wiggle this dude a little bit. By pressing and holding, we can see that we're actually assigning them. We don't need to go back to the screen, but if you want to double check, you can go back to the screen. And then go back to our main. We're going to move over from the pad to the lead. Let's go back into program edit, and say on this guy we want to assign it to the filter cutoff as well. I'm going to touch that, wiggle this, come back in, double check. I have 2 filter cutoffs on 2 different channels. The reverb mix on the bass and the low cut on the drums. I'm going to take it out of learn so I don't mess anything up. And now when we're playing this back, we can add some of that reverb on the bass, open up the filter, on all those, and then bring them back. Now that's a lot of knob turning, but what we can do is if we press and hold, go back into Q-Link Edit, we can change these all into momentary if we want, meaning it's going to snap back to the value it started at as soon as we let go. So if I turn this on, and I'll show you, and we turn this up, and then as soon as we let go, it snaps back to 1. This is really good for transitions in between different sequences. So just to demonstrate that, let's go back into our main. Let's go in and let's copy this sequence from 1 over to 2. Do it. And now within this sequence in the drums, we're going to use our handy erase button right here and just eliminate some notes. So I want to take out the kick, the clap, the other kick, that one, and that guy, and that guy. If you want a full breakdown of the erase mode, check out this video linked right up here to get a full breakdown of how this all works. But I'm going to hit do it. So now we have a little bit of what you could call a breakdown. I'm going to go into next sequence here so I can switch in between them, but let's use these, and remember they're on momentary, so they're going to add the effect while we're holding it, and then as soon as we let go, it's going to snap the parameter back to the way it was. So an example switching in between these two sequences using these momentary effects would be something like this. And when I let go, it's just going to snap the effect right back to how it was. You can fit all 3 of your fingers in there. Cut the low. And it's going to go right back to the filters where they were, the bass on the reverb. And then the next is just up to you to get creative, assigning these different banks to multiple different effects. Maybe one is a transition in between sequence 1 and 2. Maybe this bank is going to be another different transition in between sequence 2 and 3. It's kind of up to you to really get your creative juices going and maximize on the project level all 16 of these parameters. It really unlocks a massive amount of creative potential, making the MPC less of a groove box and more of a playable instrument. So I hope this video helped you understand the power of the Q-Link knobs. Whether you're on an MPC-1, a Live, or a Live 2 with 4 and 4 banks, or you're on the Mac Daddy MPC-X with access to all 16 knobs and that beautiful display for feedback, Q-Links can really bring a lot of life to your project. Now make sure to automate everything. Go into the project mode, use those for creative transitions. Let me know in the comments below how you use your Q-Links on your projects. And on that note, once again, thanks for your time, thanks for your attention. Map out your Q-Links and go make something cool.